Good morning. Today's the day that the Lord has made, so let us rejoice and be glad in it. So, I'm going to share my notes from James chapter 4. Okay, so James chapter 4 calls believers to reject worldly desires, humble themselves before God, resist the devil, and completely submit their lives to the Lord. Pride leads to conflict and separation from God, while humility leads to grace and restoration. In verses 1 through 3, the source of conflict is what we're going to see. James begins by asking why there is fighting and conflict among the believers. In verse 1, from whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members? Then he goes on to explain that selfish desires lead people to envy, argue, and seek things apart from God's will. So in verse 2, ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have, and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. Then he also says some prayers go unanswered because the motives are selfish. In verse 3, ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. So he's saying many conflicts begin when our desires become more important than God's will. So then we go on to verses 4 through 6. Friendship with the world is enmity with God. James gives strong warning about divided loyalty. In verse 4, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore would be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. He isn't saying we shouldn't love people in the world. He is warning against adopting the world's values, priorities, and sinful ways. God desires wholehearted devotion in verse 6, but he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. So he's saying pride creates distance from God, but humility opens the door for his grace. So then we'll see in verse 7 through 10, submit to God and resist the devil. This is one of the best known. We've heard our elders say it. But in verse 7, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. I heard that a lot growing up. So then James continues with a call to repentance. In verse 8, draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up, in verse 10. So he's saying victory over temptation begins with surrender to God. As we humble ourselves and seek him, he strengthens us and restores us. So then in verses 11 through 12, do not judge one another. James warns believers against speaking evil of one another. So in verse 11, speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judgeth his brother speaketh evil of the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. Then God alone is the righteous judge. In verse 12, there is one lawgiver who is able to save and destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? That's exactly why we should not judge anyone. So he said we should correct one another in love when it's necessary, but we should not condemn slander or exalt ourselves over others. So then you'll see in verses 13 through 17, don't boast about tomorrow. James addresses the pride of making plans without acknowledging God's sovereignty. In verse 13, go to now, ye that say today or tomorrow, we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get again. He reminds us how brief life is. Whereas in verse 14, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? Is it even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away? So he concludes with a powerful reminder. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is a sin. So then you go on, God, knowing God's will brings responsibility. Sin is not only doing what is wrong, but also failing to do what is right. So we'll see in chapter 4, it teaches us that God desires wholehearted devotion. Pride, selfish ambition, and love for the world creates conflict and distance from Him. But humility, repentance, and submission brings His grace, peace, and restoration. So the verse that stood out, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. We should know this verse. A lot of us, even if we're in church, we've heard people say, resist the devil and he will flee. So remind yourself that you resist, he will flee. So you can apply it every day by examining your motives when praying and making decisions. Choose God's way over the world's values. Humble yourselves before God daily. Then resist temptation by first submitting to God. Then speak with grace instead of criticizing others. Make plans with the understanding that God is in control. Act on the good God calls you to do without delay. Be obedient. Do it right then. So, this chapter is a call to repentance and wholehearted surrender, reminding believers that God's grace is given to the humble who submit to Him. Resist the devil and live according to His will. Well, everybody, I hope that this, will invite you to read it. Read James for yourself. Have a beautifully blessed day. Do something to grow the kingdom. I love you all.